Okay, so what we're going to do today is we're going to cover withdrawal of a partner. Let me make sure this is lined up. So we're going to deal with withdrawal of a partner and the dissolution of a partnership. They're the last of the topic. So today will be chapter 12, and we'll go over withdrawal of a partner. And it'll be kind of the mirror image of what we studied last time, okay? And then the dissolution, that's when the dissolution of a partnership. And this is when the partnership ends. And it works essentially like they all work essentially like you sell the assets, pay off the liabilities, what's left over goes to the owner. The only thing that's different about this one is there's several owners, so you got to divide, so you got to take care of several capital accounts, and then one of the partners may have a deficit. So it's essentially the same process that we went through with the sole proprietorship, in that you sell the assets, pay off the liabilities, and then the rest goes to the owners, except it has a couple complications in it. So if one partner has a deficit, and then of course how do you divide up between the partnerships? So let's start with withdrawal of a partner. So here's the problem. So in this case it's a partnership. Okay? I'm going to get the eraser. And in this partnership, here are the capital balances. Okay? So, in this case, Perez has 38,000. Zane has 84,000. And Rashid has 38,000. Okay? So, Perez is leaving. Perez takes 38,000 in cash with him. Here's what it looks like. Okay? So if that were the case, then October 31st, when he leaves, you'd have Perez, capital. It'll be debited for 38. And he's taken an amount of cash equal to his capital, so cash is credited for 38. Okay, does that make sense? All right, doing good? Now, another one. Perez gives his share in the partnership to his son. We'll call it A Perez, B Perez. When that's the case, we'll make this B Perez. So if that's the case, he just gives it to him. So in that case, you have October 31. You have, so this is B Perez. So B Perez, capital, is debited for 38,000. And you have A Perez, capital, is credited for 38. So that means this guy's out, this guy's in. And it works, it's mirror image of what it was like when you admitted a partner. In this case, it was just bequeathed, no money. But whether it's no money, an amount larger than this, an amount smaller than this, that amount is between two private parties. All that the partnership cares about is the amount of equity that it changes hands. Okay? So, all right, now, just as before, you have a bonus to the remaining partners and a bonus to the new partners, and it works essentially the same for it does. So, here we have a bonus to remaining partners. So in this case, what happens is Perez gets $34,000 in cash. So his account, his capital has a $38,000 balance, and we'll make this B, and he gets an amount less than that.
Yeah, how are you coming up with the 34,000?
But that's just, it's, what it is it's a bargain, and that's what he agrees to. Now,
So
it-
this is just, these are just arbitrary numbers that they've already.
in this case, the answer to that, it's a given. And it came, and the better answer to that is it came through negotiation. For instance, the next one is the bonus to the bonus to the withdrawing partners. So let's just answer this one. I'll give you a good example. So in this case, what we have here, and by the way, the partnership agreement that says gains and losses are divided, equally divided. So in this case, it's $38,000. So there's a $4,000 bonus to the remaining partners. And it's divided equally per the partnership agreement. So if that's the case, what you have is you have B. Perez, so on October 31st, you have B. Perez, comma, capital, and he's taking, it'll be 38, okay. Then you have cash of 34, that's a credit of 34. Then you have Zane, comma, capital. It'll be credited with 2. And Rashid, okay, comma, capital will be credited with 2. So in this case, he takes out an amount less than his capital. That difference then is a bonus to the remaining partners. Okay? Now, you have a bonus to the withdrawing partner. So in this case, what he does is he takes out $40,000. So B. Perez, 40,000. Now the way this, so let's go back here. Now his capital balance is 38. He takes an amount larger than that, so it'll be the bonus to the new partner and to the withdrawing partner. And what that means is he gets a $2,000 bonus. And this is equally taken out of the remaining partners' accounts. Okay? So in this case, you have, so this is October 31st. You have B. Perez. His account will be debited for $38,000. It'll reduce to 0. You'll have Zane, and this is comma capital. You have Zane, comma capital. It will be debited for 1. You have Rashid, comma capital. It'll be debited for 1. And cash will be credited for the 40. Okay? All right. And after last time's lecture, this must be, there's a applicant here, Angelica. Good. Let's get into liquidation. Okay? And again, just as before, it's the same process we did with the sole proprietorship. So step 1 is sell, so liquidation. What you do is you sell non-cash assets, and then, okay, record gain or loss. Then you allocate the gain or loss to the partners, partner capital accounts. And of course, what we're talking about here is, often you use our income and loss ratios. You pay the liabilities. And then you distribute the cash to the remaining, to the partners. Or to the partners, not that remaining, to the partners. Okay, and of course, only cash is left because you sold all the non-cash assets. So you sold the non-cash assets, so all you got left is cash, right? And if you do this, the cash balance will equal the equity. Okay? All right, so let's have an example here. So in this particular example, here's the balance sheet. Okay? So on the balance sheet at time of liquidation, over here you have the assets. So you have cash, and there's $178,000 in the cash account. Okay? And you have land of $40,000. Over here you have liabilities. And you have one liability that's accounts payable, and it has a balance of $20,000. And then in the owner's equity accounts, you have Zane, capital, $70,000. Perez, capital of $66,000, and you have Rashid, capital of $62,000. So you total the assets, and they equal $218,000 total assets. And the total liabilities and owner's equity, I'm just going to abbreviate here, equals $218,000. Okay? So the first step is they're going to sell the land, then they'll have own asset left. They'll then distribute the gain or the loss to the partnership's capital accounts. Okay? All right? Then they'll pay off this accounts payable. And then the cash will equal the balance in the capital accounts. Yeah, Gene?
Sorry, is that 66 for Perez?
It is.
Okay.
And thank you for asking. If one person has a question, somebody else does too. All right, good. Everybody else doing good? All right. Okay. All right. Now, in this case, what they do is they sell the land for 46. So in the first scenario, they sell the land for 46. So when they sell the land for 46, that means there'll be a $6,000 gain on disposal of assets. Okay? So, cash will be debited for 46,000. Okay? Land will be credited for 40,000. Zane, capital. Now, in this case, they distribute the gains and losses equally. So in this case, this $6,000 gain, $2,000 will go to Zane. 2,000 will go to Perez, and 2,000 will go to Rashid. Okay, so then what we did is we sold the non-cash assets, we allocated gain or loss. In this case, everybody gets an equal share of the gain or the loss. We're going to, next step is going to pay off the liability. Okay, so this is step one. Okay, step one. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to pay off the liability. So then accounts payable will be debited for 20,000, and cash will be credited for 20,000. Okay. Now, what happens here then is now Zane's capital will be up to 72. Perez's capital will be up to 68. And Rashid will be up to 64. Okay? The cash account will change from 178, so the cash account will increase by 46 and decrease by 20. So the cash started out at 178. It increased by 46 when we sold the land. It decreased by 20 when we paid off the accounts payable. So its balance now is 204. So we have $204,000 worth of cash, right? Okay. All these capital accounts went up by 2, okay, when we distributed the gain. Is everybody okay with that? Now, in the last step, we'll distribute the 204,000. So when we do that, what we'll do is Zane, capital will be debited for 72. Perez, capital will be debited for 68. Okay, and Rashid, capital will be debited for 64. And then cash will be credited for 204. Okay? So when you do it this way, what happens now is you have one asset left, it's cash, okay? Because you sold the non-cash assets, you pay off the liabilities, right? And then the capital accounts, the total equity, the whole total capital accounts will equal the one asset. Sound good? So in other words, what you did is you eliminated the non-cash asset by selling it. You eliminated the accounts payable by selling it. That left cash here and owner's equity there. And of course, the equation up to balance. Yeah, Gene?
Why didn't you divide the 204s equally to the partners?
Well, what you do is the 204, what you're doing is they're taking their capital account and heading for Hawaii. But what you're doing is they're cashing out of the business.
Never mind, got it.
Yep.
Sorry.
So what, that would have been a true statement had you talked about dividing the gain or the loss. Okay, but that's not what we're doing here. They're just taking their share of the business and heading out to Hawaii, or wherever they go.
Gotcha.
Okay?
Of course they get taxed.
Actually, well, let's not get into that. Let's actually not get into that. Okay? Now, when you guys take your economic, they'll love a question like that. So ask Trish or John Fight, or they'll love a question like that. Okay? Now, what would have happened? Okay. Okay. All right.
When they look at it, is there like closing the business or?
This is winding up the business.
Okay.
these guys are heading toward white. Okay? Okay, this is liquidation.
So this will be like less.
The last hurrah.
The last journal entry you ever do for that company.
Exactly. The business is no more. Okay? Now, okay, so let's go to a different scenario. Okay? So in this case, what we have here, this is a totally different scenario. So here's the capital accounts. So in these capital accounts, what they did is, so now in these capital accounts is Zane at comma capital has a balance of 19,000. Perez comma capital has a balance of 8,000. And Rashid, comma capital, has a deficit of 3,000. Now, what would have brought this about is when we sold the land for 46, in this example, the gain went to everybody. Suppose we sold it for, instead of selling it for 46, suppose we sold it for 26 or whatever. Then you would have distributed that loss equally. It turns out that in this case was a different, so then in this case when they distributed the loss, it created a deficit in this guy's capital. Does that make sense? Mariah, I see a quizzical look.
I think so, just keep going.
Just keep going, all right, because here's what happened is, so what it is in this case, what you do is you distribute the gains or losses, right? So in this case, there were huge losses. And what it means, in this case, they sold their assets at a huge deficit. And then, just as we distributed the gain by crediting the capital accounts, right? If there were huge deficits, we would have distributed them, but now a deficit would have debited the capital accounts. And in this case, they would have been all equal.
Yes.
There was a big enough deficit that this guy's, the amount that it was debited exceeded the balance by $3,000. Okay? Now, two things can happen here. This Rashid can put in the 3,000, right? Or these people, or if Rashid is unable to do that, then these people have to absorb the 3,000. Okay? So in the first instance, Rashid puts in the 3,000. So when Rashid puts in the 3,000, let's see, there's on January 15th, we'll have a debit to cash of 3,000, and we'll have a credit to Rashid, comma capital of 3,000. Then when we post it, cash will increase by 3,000 and Rashid will have a zero balance. Okay? All right. The second example is Rashid says, I haven't got any money. Okay? Then what happens in that case, so let's kind of go through this one. So here's how it worked out. Okay? All right, so now, in this particular example, the ending balance. Okay. It meant that Zane has an ending balance of 19,000. Perez has an ending balance of 8,000. Rashid has an ending balance of 0. And the cash was 24. So actually, let's have the beginning balance. So Rashid had a negative of, let's put his cash here. So cash had an ending balance of 24, Rashid had a negative of 3. So in the transaction, Rashid put in 3,000. That meant that he ended up with a balance of 0, and the cash rose from 24 to 27. Perez stayed at 8. Zane changed at 19. And then when they parted ways, of the 27,000 in cash, Zane took 19 and Perez took 8. Does that make sense?
So is that like he's still paying the 3,000 left?
He paid the 3,000. So when he paid the 3,000, his account went from a deficit to 0. The cash also went up. And I just see quizzical looks. Julie, is that a quizzical look I see there?
Yeah, I thought they was split it in 3 at the end.
Well, by the way, in this case, he covered his losses. So when he covered his losses, then the equity equals the cash, right? What you're saying is true if he won't cover the loss, because if he doesn't cover this loss, then both of these partners do have to absorb it, and in this case, they do receive an equal amount. And that'll be the next step. So your thinking is right, but it just doesn't apply to this case because he did cover it. So that's good thinking, it has to apply to a different case. Does that make sense? And we'll do the one you're describing in just a minute. Yeah,
But the way I was thinking about it was,
Okay.
since Rashid's already in the negatives, none of that cash to the right that says either way,
that's true.
so.
Yeah. But what it does do is when he puts in the 3,000, then he won't get it either way, but now it has a 0.
Yeah.
The cash went up by 3, and when it went up by 3, then these people have more cash. Let's go the other way. Now suppose Rashid doesn't have the money. If that were the case, then what would happen is, what we have here is, again, this $3,000 has to be covered by each of these people. And again, we'll just say they take care of half of it. It can be, okay. So if that were the case, then what would happen is, you'd have Zane, comma capital, and I think I better move this, thanks, I'm gonna do this thing. I'm just gonna move this, excuse me, I'm gonna move this thing so it covers the rest of the board. Okay. So if that were to happen, you have Zane, comma capital. It will be debited for 1,500. You have Perez, comma capital. It'll be debited for 1,500. And what happens is, and then you have Rashid, comma capital. It will be credited, his account will be credited for 3. So now what happens on this thing is, his account is again reduced to 0. Okay. However, these accounts are reduced by 1,500, and they take the 2,400 cash. So this is what it looks. So what happens on this thing is, when Perez can't cover, or when Rashid, I'm sorry, can't recover his loss, can't recover his deficit, the other partners have to absorb it. And in this case, they absorb it equally. Yeah, Mariah?
So it's like exchanging their account, so they don't put it into cash, they just put it straight into his account? The 3,000?
Yeah, that's exactly right. So what happens now is each of these accounts go down by 1,500. So if this were the case, what you'd have is in this case, what will happen here is this account will go down by 1,500. I'll put that in parentheses. This account will go down by 1,500. The cash would be at 0, so it'll be down here to 24. So when this happens, the ending balance of this, it'll be 17,500. and this will be 6,500, okay? And so now, Rashid's balance is 0, as you kind of pointed out. Zane's capital will be 17,500 because he absorbed 1,500 of the deficit. Perez absorbed 1,500, so his is down to 6,500. Rashid is now 0 because he took the 3,000. The cash stayed at 24. And so this person will take 17,500 and head to Hawaii. This person will take 6,500 head to Hawaii, and the business is over. So this is what it looks like when the partner can't cover their deficit. That sound good? All right, let's do some practice. All right, let's do